record. I want to take a look at the syllabus real quick, just because we haven't looked at it for a while. Kind of judge where we are in the, in the semester. So I deleted the first exam because it was basically Freud and Adler and um and existential. And existential would have been tough to apply to a case for an exam. And everybody already knew Freud and you know. So I just deleted it. We have so much to do anyway, but the main thing is I wanted to call your attention to when I will hand out the exam, and that is March 2nd. So three theories will be on the exam: person-centered, Gestalt, and choice theory, which I'll go over the night I hand out the exam. And spring break is the week after. So you'll actually have 2 weeks to complete that exam. Of course, people get busy or travel over spring break. A big mistake they make is waiting until the end of spring break to do the exam, even though they have 2 weeks. Uh, but these exams take a lot of time. So I'm going to go over the whole exam when I hand it out and give you recommendations, and people can ask questions. But um, my one recommendation is don't try to do it all in one night. Do one theory one night, another theory a second night, third theory a third night. Because, I know what it was like learning theories. You don't want to get the theories mixed up or have them blend together. So like when I write about a theory or apply it on exam to a case, I kind of want to separate that from other theories in my mind. So it's better if you just do them different days. Just focus on one theory at a time rather than trying to answer them all. And it is a lot of writing. So, yeah, I would say, you know, might take an hour or two on 3 different days. So, but yeah, just to look ahead to tell you what three theories are going to be on the exam. So next week, we're going to do person-centered. That's the first theory that's actually going to be on the exam. And yeah, so let's see. And then, so it actually gives you the due date, which is 22nd. I had to pick some time, so I just made midnight. But, I'm not going to be grading them at midnight. So. So that's kind of where we are in the semester. And that's going to be about the halfway point. It almost acts like a midterm, but, you know. And then the next exam is going to be on the same exact case. So as we work our way through the theories, you're already going to know what the exam question is. So you could even do it each week. You could do one if you wanted to, because they're all the same case. And the reason for that is I want you to be able to see that if you had one client, you could apply multiple theories in very different ways. So that's why I use the same case. Every theory you can use in some way, in a different way, for a single case. Some might address one aspect of the client better than others, but the others will have their own virtues. So, yeah, so you're already going to know the questions to all the exams after the first one. All right, so any questions about where we are in the semester? All right, well, And we'll go over it in great detail, but we've got a few weeks. We've got three other theories to go through before you get that exam. And it's take home, you know. So it's open notes, it's open book, you know. So, all right. I just know a lot of students get a little anxious about that. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on where we are with that. Um, all right, did anybody choose person-centered here for a presentation? All right, well, you can ask me
Yes.
questions about that if you want. Maybe you're not
Yes.
ready yet. Maybe you haven't gotten
Um,
that far yet.
no, Grafton, actually, it was Tressa, Zoltek, and myself, and we have the presentation for the person-centered therapy for next week. And we actually are, it's ready, but we are trying to upload it.
Okay.
So there was some technical issues, but yes.
All right. Sometimes one of the technical issues when you're trying to upload it to YouTube is you have to check the box that says allow longer videos. But
Mhm.
uh, were you able to watch some of the old um, lectures or anything like that?
Yes, actually, we did watch your old lecture on this
Good.
topic, and I hope that we incorporated it in a way that's going to be
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. The only reason I recommend that, it's not because the lecture is so great. It's just I highlight the points to be included. That's all. You
it
know.
was very helpful. Hopefully, we did a good job on this one.
Great. Yeah, and then we'll have to guess who your character is. All right. All
I'm
right.
not gonna. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
don't spill the beans.
Yeah, yeah, I
No
won't.
spoiler. All right. Well, let's talk about existentialism then. A lot of the earlier existentialists, I feel, are fairly negative because they're talking about what we refer to as nihilism. They're nihilistic. They talk about the absurdity of life, but they don't do the flip side to that. What do you do about the absurdity? Well, you find meaning. And that's what the later existentialists focused on. Um, so I think that it becomes more positive over time. Uh, and it is interesting that a lot of the early existentialists were somewhat religious, which is kind of like the opposite of what their philosophy is. But the later existentialists, finding meaning, finding purpose, finding other, uh, yeah, it definitely fits more.
Can you get a like a general time frame, Grafton, of like from like what you're saying, start early existentialist being a little bit on the absurd side and transitioning into the more meaningful side? Like, how many years are we talking? Are we talking like a decade? Are we talking like a century? Like, what are we talking? I'm not in front of my books. I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
like,
but let me just look up when Nietzsche wrote his, um, because that's a good question.
I'm just curious how long it took, the theorists at
Yeah,
the time to kind of build off of like that one-sidedness of the absurdity
yeah.
of the existentialism, right?
So Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, they were in Kierkegaard was 1843 when he published his first book. So 1843. And so it gives a nice little timeline. I typed in existentialist timeline. So the early existentialists, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, um, they were from 1843, and I'm talking not their birth date, their first publication, to kind of the late 19th century, so the 1800s. Um, then, then they talked about phenomenology or phenomenological, and phenomenological is a little they include it in existentialism, but it's a little different than existentialism. It has more to do with, so phenomenology is like, I think it has a lot to do with empathy, but it's really imagining oneself in the other person's shoes, um, technically. And so they have like Heidegger and interestingly enough, Duquesne in Pittsburgh has the largest phenomenological library in North America. So the only larger library of phenomenological studies is in Europe. And they they have a real foundation in phenomenology, both in religion, in philosophy, psychology, and counselor education. Um, and that's where I went. The but so that's like 1900s. But then in the later 1900, well, mid 1900s, so 40s and 50s, um, then they're dealing with like absurdity. So that's when you get like Camus, he wrote The Plague, um, you know, and even like if you read The Plague, like I'll tell you, The Plague was an interesting book to reread during the pandemic. And uh but even when he wrote The Plague, I could see little hints of kind of finding that I thou experience in the midst of absurdity, having those relationships in the midst of absurdity. And you know, but then the later existentialists, so I'm talking like Yalom and um, Viktor Frankl, they all wrote their first books immediately after World War II. Now that's interesting, that timeline. And I think World War II created a shift in the philosophy because, World War II was kind of like the quintessential absurdity of life. Why? Everybody asked why, you know? And I think people needed to refind meaning and purpose after World War II. So Viktor Frankl, his was 1946, immediately the year after World War II ended. And, you know, I think a lot of the people who moved, the other thing I think happened was it moved from philosophy to psychology. That was another shift. So, whereas before World War II, mainly philosophers were writing about existentialism. After World War II, psychologists took up a lot of the uh, existentialism. Well, if you're in therapy, you're not just going to say life is meaningless to somebody who's depressed. You have to find a purpose, a meaning, a will to move forward. And so that's another reason it shifted. So World War II ended. Uh, there was a lot of questioning and soul searching, and then it shifted from philosophy to psychology. And I think that made a big difference. And so I would say 1946 to the present were the positive uh, existentialists that were also psychologists.
Kind of a crazy thought, but I'm thinking 46, okay, not far off from, like, let's just say kind of the generation of like love and like let's experiment with this and that, and uh do you think that that has anything to do with that search on the other side, the opposite end of the spectrum, the meaning of life and the experimentation of all that kind of love and kind of the 60s, end of the 50s, 60s, 70s type of deal?
So think about it a different way. These people had experienced World War II. The hippies were their children.
That makes absolute sense if we're looking at it through that lens. Yeah, that absolutely does, because they grew up. Yep, I got you. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I think. Yeah, thinking about it that way. What else?
Just to add to that, I think that, yeah, Matthew, you're definitely onto something because I'm just thinking about Germany and baby boomers, right? After the Second World War or after the World War II, that's when the German economy really boomed because of the due to the help from the United States and baby boomers who then came and were able to create the wealth that Germany was able to really benefit from for a very long time. Um, and I'm also just in terms of what you just said, Grafton, what I really liked about your lecture was the focus that you put on the word emerge and this philosophical approach that you have to that, in a sense that throughout our life, we are shedding off the things that maybe were brought onto us through
Yeah,
our
that
environment.
baggage.
And
Yeah.
that's this baggage. Yes, it really resonated with me how existentialists believed or preached um, that that it's about the discovery, about everything that I'm not. So I have to say that it was a very interesting chapter for me to read. So I knew Frankl actually. Also read a book by Yoel. I'm laying on the couch, and it was just interesting to see how it all comes
Oh, I
together.
haven't read Laying on the Couch. I
Yeah,
read the other ones.
it
What'd
was
you think
very
about that one?
I enjoyed it. I remember thinking about this book during our ethic course because he's describing, like in most of his books, he's describing his therapy sessions with his patients or imaginative patients, and he was talking about a patient who offered him some advice on buying stocks in the States. So he's discussing this ethical conundrum if he should go with that or not. And I really had to think about that in
Did he
class
do
when we
it?
were
Did he
just.
buy it?
No, he didn't. He did the right thing, but he is reminiscing about it and kind of with a blink or like with a little smirk in a sense. Oh, I should have used that. I should have went with the advice that he was trying to give me. But of course, this advice coming from the patient was a way of the patient of the client to to create a certain situation within the therapy. So that's why he probably also included that in the book. So yeah, again, it was very interesting to read about all of these people, and I
That was
really enjoyed.
1996. It could have been Microsoft. He'd be a million. Yeah, he is. He's a millionaire anyway.
He's, of course, it's all anonymous, so he's protecting his clients. But I also really enjoyed the philosophical part about existentialism. And of course, it makes sense since it's built on philosophy by Nietzsche and Sartre, even though they're coming from completely different centuries. But I have to say that I felt very compelled to actually maybe explore it more even. I really like psychoanalysis. I have like a soft spot for psychoanalysis, but I feel that existentialism is probably something that really offers us or offers me this opportunity to maybe look at counseling from this very philosophical point of view. So I think I'm someone who enjoys going deeper, and through reading by reading the text, I felt that that was something that I experienced here. So
So yeah, when you say going deeper, I think that's one of the problems I find with a lot of contemporary theories like CBT. Well, it can help you with irrational thoughts, but it really doesn't deal with the deeper issues like people feeling empty, unfulfilled, a lack of meaning or purpose. CBT is really not going to deal with that kind of stuff. When people are searching, and so maybe they've been taught all their lives. I followed the rules, followed the instructions. I studied, I got a good job, I made a lot of money, I bought a house, I got a nice car, and yet I feel unfulfilled. I get so
Yes.
many patients who are having a midlife crisis because they thought, wow, they worked hard, they did everything they thought they were supposed to do. They got the promotions, they started the companies, and most of them are fairly well off, and but they feel unfulfilled and lost and depressed, and yeah, and as if they had been lied to. And I
Yes,
believe
I
they
can
probably
see
have.
I can see that. And I also do believe I'm also just older and I also have my life experience that I collected until this point. And of course the cases that you discuss where people feel like they were maybe robbed of something or they were expecting something and it didn't materialize. But I'm also thinking about clients, including myself, yes, who are just looking for meaning in life. And I do believe that we go through these phases where we maybe encounter change or there was an experience that just really took the earth um, from our, like in a sense, really made us experience something so dramatic and so different um, that we really need guidance and just need a moment and need time to process that and know where to move from there. So that's where I also see this therapy or this theory being really useful. On the other hand, while I was reading Corey and the chapter on existential therapy, I was also really tempted to discuss the topic of the more um, the shortcomings from a diversity perspective, and I think that's also part in the book um, where Corey is discussing the fact that existentialism is based so strongly on self-determination and how that stays sometimes in conflict with your systemic situation for the client, right? So as much as you're trying to maybe make different choices or create the situations where you feel some type of a relief as a client, what if the system around you is blocking that, or it's something that you have no control over? So if you could speak a little bit to that, I
Well, I
really
mean, I know Corey, and I don't always agree with Corey. Um, and you know, so um, I mean, seemed to work okay in the middle of a Nazi concentration camp. That's fairly limiting.
okay, okay.
So, yeah, systemic issues, they're there. They are difficult, but perhaps they might even add to the experience in some way. Um, I mean, I never grew when I was happy. I only grew when I was struggling. But I'd like to go back further that to what you said about these things that happen in life that change our perception of meaning. And I can think of some good examples like that when you were saying that. I was thinking about my own life. I was thinking, well, what happened in my life that created that? Well, I guess losing both my parents when I was in my early 40s, but you're always a child when your parents are still around. And when they're no longer there, there's definitely a shift, a cognitive and emotional shift that, um, wow, I guess I'm an adult or an orphan or some. something I had to sort through. Um, the other point was, uh, I always thought everybody has goals. To some people, it might be that big promotion. To me, it was like getting that doctorate. And once I had it, I still didn't feel fulfilled because that that is just the same as like succeeding in business or whatever. Um, but it's really not, success doesn't equal fulfillment. Yeah. Goals are often when I see clients, it's often when they reach those goals that they have a crisis because they're like, wow, I worked for 12 years to get here. I thought this would be the answer. I'd find fulfillment, but it's still not there. And then it makes them question everything. Yeah. So it is interesting. And it's almost related to existential experiences, but it's more like existential crises.
And that they also come all like they come up again and again. I think that's also
Yeah.
such a something that I had to think about, that we are never done. We are always in the
No.
process. And of course it's the same with all other theories, but because there is this philosophical element to it that's so stressed also in the theory, I found it, yes, that's exactly, I really found myself in it somehow, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that example I gave, like maybe I'm at a bar with friends and I go to the restroom and look in the mirror and all of a sudden it's like, time stops and I'm like, whoa, I'm here in my life. And I do a little, check-in. Am I where I want to be? Am I where I should be? Am I in a totally different place? Yeah. Mirrors are dangerous with existentialism.
Just had a question in regards to kind of the reference earlier made about like the idea of existential experiences creating the shedding experience, right? What is underneath the shedding? Is it already established or is it formed based off of the existential experience, i.e., is it based off of something that good happened or bad? Is it already there or is it formed again based off of that, right?
So I believe it is, um, we shed what other people put upon us. And when we let those things go, we are left with our genuine self.
And if that's not enough,
And what's that?
I said, and if that isn't enough
Enough for what?
for that particular person, we're
But
left with our genuine self. Some people may not even know what that means at that point in their experience. They have an
well,
existential experience, and that the let's say identities, whatever you want to call it, shed off, and then you're left with this foreign person, right? You're left with this foreign. You don't even recognize this person. You don't recognize them on the inside. You don't recognize them on the outside. And yeah, maybe it is your most authentic self. Maybe it's your most genuine form. But if you've never introduced yourself to that form, it's going to feel very odd, no?
so the interesting thing is learning that you are enough as you are. That's the realization. Because until you realize that you are enough, you're still holding on to other people's conditions and expectations.
And I
So,
would
how, from an
also,
existentialist standpoint, how what would be again? You say you like existentialism. That's what you practice in. So then, what would be your direction for say a client that's like, you know, how do you get there? It's like, what's the steps you take to get there? Just wait for another existential experience.
No, it's It's confronting that which is not genuine, helping the client to confront everything that is not genuine. And once they confront that and realize that it's not genuine, and see, the next two theories, I believe, are rooted in existentialism. They just develop their own theory. So person-centered is really about the I-thou experience and accepting other people unconditionally, and hence accepting ourselves unconditionally. But then Gestalt, Fritz Perls, he moves through the layers of personality. And so the first layer is realizing that we're phony, that we're not genuine, that we picked up all this baggage in order to be accepted by others because we fear rejection. And then once we realize that, um, we have a fear of letting all this go and being our genuine selves. And then we have kind of an impasse where we might be stuck. Where do we go now? How did we get stuck in our lives that we're not genuine? And then we have the implosive layer, which is like, I'm beginning to change my thoughts about myself and who I am, and I'm thinking that I'm just going to be me. And then the explosive layer, actually letting it happen, just being oneself, and pissing off a lot of people because they don't like what you say.
I think even to that point, I really appreciate that point too. But not only just people, I think now it's even more like, I don't know, how would we say this? Like groups or the norms, right? Like when you talk about that idea of phony, right? I mean, you look at social media. I mean, come on. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
built off of it. It's built off of that ideology of like you have to present a certain way in order for people to feel a certain way about you.
Yeah, it's a machine. Yeah, to break free from that societal machine is often difficult. One clue that someone is not being authentic is that they find something that they're happy with, but it doesn't last. So maybe you've bought a new car and you're happy and you're feeling fulfilled, and but then it's fleeting. True awareness and true fulfillment is not fleeting.
And I would add to that, just matched what you said. I would add that that's exactly once the shading took place, that's exactly I feel like where the work begins. Because then
The
you
journey
can,
begins then, yeah.
yes, you can look then at what's left or how you want to approach that, how you want to go
Because
about it.
previously you weren't on the path.
Mhm.
You're on somebody else's path.
One of the things that I've learned the hard way in life, unfortunately, several existential experiences on the negative end of the spectrum over here. But I will say this: I didn't choose that initial path, right? It was chosen for me through parenting style, through exposure to different environments, and so on down the lane.
Nobody chooses it. It's all
Of
put
course,
upon us.
absolutely. But I will say this is that when you go through an existential experience of any degree, there isn't really many options other than to kind of go forward. And in that going forward process, a lot of these concepts that we're talking about right now almost reveal themselves. They reveal themselves at different paces, they reveal themselves in different scenarios and environments. And you kind of come to this place where it all makes sense. Like you said, you're looking in the mirror and you're like, hey, I'm here right now. When in a lot of different examples, maybe you shouldn't have been for one reason or the other. So I just say it like this. I think it's interesting because there isn't much of a, in my opinion, choice. Because if you have something bad happen to you and you just stop moving or you stop pushing or you stop moving in the direction of forward, well, what's the result? you stay kind of in that space that you were before, right? You go back to that familiarity, you go back to that identity that your family created, or that whatever.
But is that, Matt, Alex here, but is that, Matt, the point why people actually then land in counseling or in therapy, that you get to the point where you realize nothing is the same, nothing is as it has been, and I don't know what to do about it. I am unable to make sense of my experience. So like Grafton said, and I think we all agree that you cannot pick events or things that happen to you. That's just the destiny, fate. But I think that that's how I understand this theory. It's a lot about how you approach what happens to you and what do you do with what happens to you. And that's something that you can, or that's what we are being taught, that you have control over that, and that's the only thing that you have control over, right? So to me, it's moving forward from a place of no return, and learning how to be and how to create the life that you want for yourself. Yeah.
I mean, after we have this realization, and then we can't choose events that happen to us, but we can then authentically choose how we want to react to them.
And also surrender to a certain extent. When you're talking about shedding, I also have to think about surrendering and just really allowing yourself to sit with the process and just looking at what is.
So I would say giving up control is another way of saying that. So now there's a movement that looks at the difference between craziness. Excuse me.
Not now. I'm in class.
All right. Late night mail. They deliver mail late now. Man. All right. So, yeah, it's that many people studying Buddhism or studying later existentialism see a lot of comparisons between the two. And they usually focus on the comparison between the two. But there are differences as well that people normally don't note. But I think there are a lot of commonalities because, you know, they talk about it more like shedding the ego, whereas existentialism talks about becoming genuine. There's a lot of similarities there. Giving up control, you know. So it is an interesting ongoing discussion over the last 30 years.
One last question, and it might be a weird one, but is every person at one point or the other in their life going to go through an existential experience? Or are there people that just don't have those?
Uh, I think a vast majority of our society is not aware, where our society would be greatly different.
I would venture to say maybe a little nicer, wouldn't you? Like a little, just a
We'd be
smidge on the
kinder.
nicer side.
It's
Just a
that,
little bit, just a little bit.
it's like the Grateful Dead, be kind.
I had somebody yell at me for holding the door for them the other day. I was so taken aback as well. Okay, well, you must be
I hope
having
you
some
shut it.
kind of day.
I really enjoyed that interview with Rollo May. That
Oh yeah, what'd you think about that?
I enjoyed that so much. I found him yeah, I found it just fascinating, the idea that people had voted for Nixon because of repressed anxiety. And um I loved his hopefulness about like periods of disillusionment, I think it was, and then this, evolving into this new society. I liked the way he viewed that. I did have a oh, and about I had written down that vitality decreases because of apathy and depression. And I also thought that was interesting and insightful. And I had a question about anxiety. There was a lot of talk about anxiety. And
There's a book, The Age of Anxiety.
yeah, I actually ordered a few because you had said, "Oh, get it from the author's mouth," the
Yeah,
mouth of the. So I'd
yeah.
actually ordered a few books. So I don't think that was one of them, but because I was so fascinated by the idea of these philosophers and the implications of existentialism. I had a question about existential anxiety and the word using anxiety. Is all anxiety existential, or is there just anxiety, about everyday things, or is everyday things existential? Kind
Well,
of, is
so
there a
I would
concrete?
say that at the root of all anxiety is fear.
Okay,
And
right.
anxiety is future oriented. Depression is past oriented. Anxiety is future oriented. Depression has to do with regrets and what happened in the past. And anxiety has to do with fear of the unknown and what might happen. But if you're living in the past or the future, you're not living in the present. And
Right.
so anxiety, according to the early existentialists, is a fear of death.
Always.
Well, existentially, that's the ultimate fear, isn't it?
Right. That's so that part I can see. I guess I was thinking in the ordinary everyday where people maybe they're using the word anxiety, but they really mean nervous or anxious or worried about something. But
Or
so it is
fear. Yeah.
concrete. Or it's all fear. Right.
Yeah. So, but so another concept in existentialism is the existential vacuum, when we realize that ultimately we are alone. And that's like, you know, being alone in a crowd. Like ultimately, there's just me. But then the later existentialists say, okay, yeah, we figure that we experience that existential vacuum. There's only me. Who am I? And then they said there is no me without a you. And that leads to the next step in this process, that is, we find out who we are through the experience of other. Yeah. So, anxiety can take a lot of different forms,
Right. That's what I was thinking in relation to this. And
but the result of moving through that anxiety is living in the present. So that's the goal. Yeah. To live in the present, to be present, to experience the presence of other. Like how many times, like I have three teenagers and they all talked me into getting them cell phones. And I agreed because they're going on like all kinds of activities and with friends, and they might have an emergency. But the first night they have their phones, they're all sitting at the dinner table looking at their phones. And I'm like, no more phones at the table. My wife and I go out to Applebee's. We see people on dates looking at their phones. We see families looking at their phones, friends. it's how often in our society do we experience 100% of somebody else's attention in the present? The beautiful thing about this idea of once we become genuine and present and live in the now, if we're thinking about the past or if we're thinking about the future and we're not living in the present, we're thinking about time. We're either thinking about time that has passed, we're living in the past, or we're thinking about the future time, what's going to happen. But if we're living in the present, fully immersed in the present, there is no time. There's just now. So it's like if you're doing something you really love, did you ever notice that you lose track of time and it just seems like a fleeting moment? And so spiritually, you can believe whatever you want, but when people think there is an afterlife and they say it's forever, well, forever sounds like an awful long time. But in reality, eternity is a constant now, and there is no time. See, I think this kind of discussion's fun, but you know. What do you think, Nico?
It's letting you folks, letting the experts talk while I soak it all in.
How about you, Katie? Questions, comments?
No, I didn't really get much. Like, I read like the notes and stuff, so I was just trying to think because I know like we have the discussion board to do. Because, like, I know you said to like comment on like what we thought about like the lecture, like the interview and stuff like that. And you
But the
also
main
said
part of the discussion board is like, have you had an existential
that's what
experience?
I was thinking about. I don't know if I have. I honestly don't know if I have. And I'm trying to sit here and think, have I had one? But I don't know if I have.
Like, was there ever something that made you kind of reevaluate your life? Or maybe you
Um,
feel like you're totally in the present? Like, even when like my cat had kittens and I pick up this baby kitten, and I think, wow, you're brand new.
yeah.
Like, that was
I
an
don't
existential moment.
see, I don't know if this would be an existential moment. It's not like I don't know if I would say it's personally like with me, but like just like a little back history back when I was like 15, I watched my grandfather pass away right in front of me. Like the whole family was with him. Like, that's what he wanted, surrounded by
Yeah.
the family. And it's just like I watched years before my grandfather passing away, just him having to go to the hospital because of him having health issues due to him smoking so many years prior, like him helping build houses. So he had like COPD and all this other stuff. And I just remember back when this happened, like I watched my grandfather just sitting in a hospital bed sleeping because he had to get a blood transfusion from something. And it just made me sit there. I just sat there and cried because I just thought of my dad because like my dad smokes like countless cigarettes a day. And I'm just thinking, man, am I going to have to do this with my dad like when he gets older? So in that moment, like when it was happening, I did think that I'm like, I'm gonna have to take care of my dad the way my grandmother takes care of my grandfather. And it's like, I don't know obviously, if that happens, I'm gonna do it because it's my dad and I love him. But I really want to have to do that? No, because I remember calling him and telling him like, listen, I don't want to have to take care of you the same way Nana has to take care of puppy. Like, I don't want to have to do that. So like, obviously he's going to make the choice himself because he's an adult to quit smoking, but it's like I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
um
But it's not just the caring for,
mhm
it's it's the sadness as you move
mhm
through that end of life process that you don't
yeah
want to experience.
yeah. And I remember just because like I was there like when he passed away. My mom, one of her church choir friends was in the process of dying, and we went and visited her. And while we were there, she was starting to like, I don't know if you could say act or behave the same way my grandfather was, like the long pauses in between breathing, like the gurgling and everything. And I had a full on anxiety attack in the room, I guess, because I was like, she's gonna die in front of me too. I was like, I cannot be in this room if she dies. I was like, so I had to like
Why
go
not?
where because I was just afraid of her dying in front of me too, because of how I watched my grandfather die in front of me. I just wasn't going to be able to handle it, and because I was just crying for like I remember like there were other people in there visiting too. They're like, "What's going on with Katie?" And she's like, "Well, she watched her grandfather die right in front of her." So like, I don't want to say death is a touchy subject, but like I was just afraid she was going to die in front of me, so I had to like go calm myself down before I walked back in the room to see her.
So that is a difference between modern society and every society before this, that death was a natural part of life and
Mm-hmm.
people were present for death. And I think it's kind of sad that people aren't as present for it now.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't know, because it's like, I guess I never realized, because this, like, when my grandfather passed away to when I went and visited this friend, like my mom's friend, it was a 5 year difference in between my grandfather passing away. And I guess I never realized how much
Maybe you
his
never
death
really
death
processed your
affected me
grandfather's
until I
death.
saw somebody else like him, and I'm like, wow, I guess this has affected me more than I thought, because after he passed away, I never really, I don't want to say I had to come face with death again until that point, but I guess like, it's like I didn't have to face that situation again until I saw my mom's friend, and then it made me realize how much watching my grandfather pass away in front of me like affected me, because I was still only 15 years old whenever it happened.
Yeah.
So
You should take the grief and loss class.
I would say, I think that was one of the, isn't that that's an elective class, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
See, I think I have to take the education class and the
Oh,
special
you do.
education class because
You
I didn't
do.
have those yet. See, that's why
Yeah,
I
you
remember
do.
we talked about it before. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I have so many options. And then you're
Yeah.
like, wait, you
No,
have to
you just
take
got
these. I'm
two.
like, never mind. I'm like, all my options are
Yeah.
gone now.
Yeah.
So,
But you know what? In your hours of free time, you can go to my YouTube and take the class for free.
yeah.
Yeah. But so I have a different experience of death because like I went to seminary when I was like 19, and so I've been with like hundreds of people who died.
Hmm.
And I think there is, I don't know, um, a reverence of being present with somebody during that time
Hmm.
in their lives. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I guess I want to say, like, I purposely avoid death. And my point of that is, like, I work in a nursing home, and like I've
Wow.
worked in this nursing home for many
Yeah.
years. I
So
originally was
you
a
get to
cook.
know the people
Yeah, so
there
it's
and
like
they're
when I
older.
hear somebody's declining, I think in my head, oh, let me go visit them because I'm close to them, and then I never go because I don't want to go in there, and then it's like they pass away on me, so I'm like, I'm like, I'll just,
Avoid it.
yeah, avoid it from a distance, I guess.
Mm.
And I don't know, and it's just like, it's, I guess, I don't want to say contradictory, but like the environment that I grew up in, they're not so much Catholic anymore, but I did grow up in a very religious family. Like, they talk about like, I don't want to say I have this like fear of dying, but like I don't necessarily no offense to anybody that believes in that. I don't personally believe in everything that I got taught growing up anymore. So it's just
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So facing this fear will help you to process a lot.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, I don't know if it's because like I have like that fear. It's like, and because I don't necessarily believe in everything I got taught growing up, I sometimes, not all the time, but very rarely, I'll think, man, dying's gonna stink. I'm like, what if there is no like, what if there is no, like they say, like reincarnation or afterlife? I'm like, then what's gonna happen to me then? I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if there's nothing, people
Yeah.
find like atheists is a belief system, and people find comfort in nothingness.
Hmm.
So it really, it's whatever you want to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Katie, to that I would say, I'm sorry to hear that it happened like that and that you experienced it in such an intense way. Um, I mean, I think it was interesting when you said that you have this fear that now everybody who's in the process of dying or close to that will die on you. I think that there is, also an unbelievable potential for you to look into that because I can assure you, not everybody, like people don't die to hurt you or to
Yeah.
do something to you. So I
But
think it's
what if
just
they did? That's still
maybe
okay.
that's still okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to maybe just point to this philosophical again aspect of that yeah, it's mystery of life, right? We don't know when we're gonna pass away, we don't know when we're gonna lose people who are close to us, but that's just life. That's like ingrained in us. That's the part of the suffering, that's the part of being a human. So I think that there is probably a lot for you just to discover when you once you decide to go on that path of
Hmm.
looking into it. And I know that it's scary and it's unknown and it's something that you push away from you, but um, again, it's the mystery of life. I think we all probably from time to time strive to understand, our experience and what happens to us
Hmm.
I think that
more.
is an existential experience, though. I think you just haven't processed it.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I was reading it, I'm like, I don't even know if I really have. I'm like, I don't know if this counts. I'm like, I don't know, like, if it really is one. Because I'm like,
Yeah,
It
I don't
counts.
really know. I'm
yeah.
like, I don't know.
I'm not going to say you didn't have one. If you think
Yeah.
it's an existential experience, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not for me to judge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the eye in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. But thank you for sharing. It reminded me of, I remember because Grafton, you talked about how we used to experience death in a much closer way. Actually remember, I'm from Poland, so I remember I was around 14, 15, so I was around your age, Katie, when my grandma passed away. And I remember that her body actually stayed in the family house for 3 days. And
Hmm.
people would come and they would pray and they would
Hmm.
sing. So I remember also experiencing that as a child, neighbors would really come pray. People would bring flowers. I remember my grandma laying in the casket in the middle of the room, and there was this sweet sense of flowers in the room. And I remember seeing my dad cry for the first time, and I was witness to that, and
Hmm.
was just there was like a lot of things happening to me, and it was very difficult for me to yeah to understand even what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing. So
Yeah, it's like whenever like the whole like process was going on, it's like just like in general, like I guess you could say like my personality, I was shy, very quiet, never really talked to people except the one friend I had in high school. And it's like the day that he passed away, um, all my teachers were like, Katie, are you okay? Katie, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, what's going on? I had no idea why my teachers were asking me if I'm all right. And I asked my mom, I'm like, why are all my teachers asking me if I'm okay? And she's like, oh, I emailed them letting them know like your grandfather's sick. I'm like, why would you tell them that? I'm like, why wouldn't you tell me? I'm like, I had all my teachers asking me if I'm all right. And I'm like looking at them like they're crazy. I'm like, what are they asking me? And it was just when it happened, so like I was in like marching band and stuff in high school, and my grandfather, I think it was back in like the 50s. I think technically he was in the Air Force during, I think it was the Korean War, but he never got deployed because I guess back during that time, if your significant other was expecting, they didn't make you go overseas, whatever the rules were. So there was this song that I always played when I was in the marching band for like Memorial Day or Veterans Day. It's called the Armed Forces Salute. And it had like all the songs from all like the different military branches. And my grandfather loved when I played it for him. So it was just like it was so like I just remember I had band practice the day that my grandfather passed away. I had band practice on Wednesdays after school. My band teacher asked me how he was doing, and I'm like, oh, not too great. Like the priest had just come the day before. It was like, doing like the anointing of the sick, like saying some final prayers. Family was around. And then my mom picked me up from school, and I just remember it was all within like 5 minutes. So it was just like, and like when I talked about it like with my mom afterwards, like even my grandmother, I guess my mom was already there with my grandfather, and she said, hey dad, I'm going to pick Katie up from school, I'll be right back. I think I was at the house for maybe 3 minutes. I was putting my flute together to play the song, and it happened. So like when we've like discussed it after the fact, we think maybe he was like, we obviously don't know that, maybe he was like waiting to see me before he left, because it's like my mom said, hey, I'm getting Katie, I'll be right back. I was there no longer than 3 minutes, and then it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Also, I know that it's such a tragic also situation, but what a gift too that you were able to be that, like we like not it's not always like that you can be
yeah.
there when
Hmm.
people that you love pass away. So yeah, I think it's just yeah, it's something that you probably, like Crafton said, you have to go through and process for yourself. But um, I think there is just a lot that you will also learn about yourself. Even though
Yeah.
it's such a scary moment to actually make the step in this direction. I think that there is really a lot of knowledge and also like self-understanding that you can gain from that. So a lot of
Hmm.
energy to you and a lot of, yeah, I wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up? All right. Glad to have you all coming on a Thursday. Good to talk with you.
Take
We'll see you
care.
later.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.